Welcome back to Rise and Tell with Shikha. I am Shikha Singh, your host and author. I have got something special to share. My brand new book, Unburnable Ambition: How Overachievers Win Without Burning Out. This book is for all of us who dream big but refuse to let burnout be the price. If you'd like early chapter, preview, and launch bonuses, head to shikhasingh.com/unburnable ambition and sign up today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Our guest for today is Michele DeFilippo. She has a lot of knowledge about self-publishing and she owns a business called 1106 Design. She spoke about the importance of making sure that your self-published book is almost as good as a traditionally published book when it comes to the book cover, design, and other areas. She has more than 50 years of experience in book publishing, and it is pretty evident. 706 Design provides self publishing peace with quality editorial and design services, reliable publishing advice, and the convenience of project management at every stage. Michelle's firm has helped more than 4,000 authors publish like the pros. She offered us a free guide on her website, Publish Like the Pros. It's an 80-page guide. So go check it out if you're interested in self-publishing. So there you go, everybody. Today we have with us Michele DeFilippo. Thank you so much for your time, Michele. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheena. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. I want to know so much from you today. You've been in the self publishing industry and the book industry for so many years, Michele. So let's just dive right in.
Okay.
One struggle that I faced when I self published my first book was marketing. And even wrapping my head around all the different moving parts. You think you have a story, but it's not enough. So tell us, what can people do starting today if they have a story in mind and are thinking of self-publishing?
Well, I think self-publishing is the greatest opportunity that has ever hit the publishing industry. It started in earnest in about 2001 when Amazon came on the scene, because before that, you had to work with a traditional publisher in order to get your book in bookstores. And there was no other way to do it. So Amazon changed all that. All of a sudden, anyone who wanted to could get their book in front of the public and sell books and distribute whatever their message was, whether it was a memoir or nonfiction book or a novel, whatever it was. They had this wonderful amount of freedom to do so. But in the meantime, in the last 20 years, there's been a lot of misinformation and confusion generated. And so that's what I like to talk about.
Awesome. Great. All right. Let's talk about that. What's the biggest myth that people have about self-publishing?
Well, there's a lot of myths actually, but if I can start with the fact that there are three ways to publish a book. The first is traditional publishing, which we're all familiar with. In that model, the author pays nothing.
Correct.
The author, the publisher pays all the expenses to produce the book and then takes most of the revenue from sales when the book is sold in order to recoup its investment. That's perfectly fair business model. Under that model, the author typically makes about $1 per book.
Right.
So when self-publishing first became available, it was understood that the author was the publisher, and the author would pay the expenses to produce the book, and the author would earn 100% of the net revenue from sales when a book was sold. Right. And that was great. And that meant the authors could earn, instead of a $1 royalty, they could earn $6 to $8 in return for their investment in the services. That's when the trouble started. It wasn't too long after self-publishing came on the scene that some people's ears must have perked up and they said to themselves, "Oh, you mean the author is willing to pay the expenses to publish the book?
Yeah.
We want in on that." So we started seeing self-publishing companies. Later on, self-publishing companies rebranded themselves into hybrid publishing companies. Yeah. And then the do-it-yourself message also started to take hold. So all of those three things have created a lot of confusion, a lot of stress unnecessary stress, I think, for authors in terms of trying to self-publish their book. Many authors don't know that you do not need to use a publisher to self-publish your book. And that is my core message.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's going to help a lot of people because I remember in 2021 when when I published my first book and it came out, everybody asked me, "How did you do it?" And I had to ask them to go find out and read about certain resources. But one thing that I feel people don't understand, or I think there is miscommunication all over the internet about this, is that even if you decide to go the self-publishing route, there is a lot of work that you have to do in order to become successful, in order to have a book that is at least well known or is being distributed to the right audience.
Mhm.
And that's one thing I feel people have no clue about, because when you are thinking as a writer, your main goal is my story worth it? Are people going to read it? Am I going to finish it? But after that, it's like your brain just shuts off. You have no idea about it. And I experienced that myself too, Michelle.
Mhm.
So tell me, in your experience, and I know you also have a business around designs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to know, even before they go to the design phase, what do people come to you with as their biggest problem with self publishing?
Well, actually, the biggest problem I see is that many authors set out to write a book and they write the book that they are interested in,
Yes.
which is to be expected. But what many of them don't do is determine who the market is.
Mm,
Because you should really, for example, in a nonfiction book, you should identify a very common problem that a lot of people are suffering from, and you
yes.
should write the book to solve that problem in your own unique way. And then
Right.
you have a good chance of selling books because you're addressing a need, right? And you're also addressing a need in a way that only you can. So
Right.
that's, understanding your market before you even begin writing is a good thing to do. That applies to fiction as well. But the last thing you should be doing is just writing the book that you love and hoping that the market's going to come along for the ride after the fact. That's
Right.
putting the cart before the horse.
Correct. I agree. Okay, let's talk about designs and let's talk about your business, Michelle. Tell us what was the driving factor behind you starting this business?
Well, my start in publishing was pretty much an accident. I was looking for a job after I got out of school in New York, and Crown Publishing was the first company that was willing to hire me. So I accepted the job, and that's how I got into publishing. But I loved it right from the start because every project was unique. I did all kinds of things. I designed album covers and book covers and catalogs, and to this day, I that's what I love about the business is because every project, every author we work with is unique, and so there's no boredom.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about cover design. Let's, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to be honest based on your experiences and everything that you've faced till date. People really do judge a book by a cover, yes or no?
100%. But we do it subliminally. You may tell yourself that I don't care about the cover, I care about the book. But that first impression of the book cover, when the minute you see it and before you even have a chance to think consciously about it, it has made an impression in your brain,
Yes.
right? So cover design is very misunderstood. People think it's really simple, but it's not. There's a lot of practice to that goes into it to know color, the arrangement of the elements, the hierarchy of the elements, good typography, and also how to make the book fit its genre. Okay,
Mm,
different genres of books have different appearances. A cookbook looks different than a history book. That looks different than a memoir. That looks different than a children's book. So the very first task for a designer is to figure out, okay, what kind of book are we working on? Who's going to see it? What do the major publishers, what are they doing right now so
mm,
that we can emulate what they're doing so that our book can borrow some of their credibility. And
Got
there's a
it.
lot of skill that goes into that. Um, a phone call I will never forget. A woman called me one time and she said, "How much do you charge for a cover?" And this was a long time ago, so I told her 15, and it was 1,500. And she said, $15? I said, "No, 1,500." She goes, "Oh, that's crazy. You can't fool me. I know you only spend 15 minutes on a book cover." So,
Oh,
as you can imagine, that was a pretty short call.
right, right.
But it highlights the misunderstanding. She went on to say, "I know you only spend 15 minutes on the cover. You pick a picture and you put a title on top and you're done." And of course, that's not the case.
Ah, there's
but
so much to it.
but a lot of people sort of think that, maybe not to that extreme, but they do think it's very simple, and it's not. There's a lot that goes into designing an effective book cover.
I
The
agree.
book cover has to make people stop. If they
Yes,
don't stop, you're dead.
exactly.
They have to stop and learn more about the book, and then only they can decide if they're interested. We can't control that, but we can make them stop.
I agree. And I feel like there's so much that people don't know about. You can be an avid reader, and you'll know this if you're an avid reader, because just based off of the different sizes of the book, hardcover or paperback, matte finish or glossy, the color of the paper that you select, is it going to be white? Is it going to be gray? I mean, not gray, I mean brown,
Mhm.
recycled paper. There's so much to it that people have no idea that goes into, like, the art is just one part of it,
Mhm.
and then there's so much to it. But I agree when you say that that's the first key element where people have already decided and it's made an impression in your mind. Yes, I need to at least read what the book is about, or the title. So what is one thing that you feel authors need to keep in mind as the owner of the story, but not having that design idea or the designer perspective? What are there some things that they need to keep in mind, and be, things that they should leave to their designer?
Well, one thing that we try to communicate to authors is that the inside of the book, the text is all about you and what you have to say, but the cover of your book has to be all about what's going to attract your buyers.
Hmm.
Because Amazon, if people type in your title, search for your book, Amazon is not just going to show your book, they're going to show the bestsellers right beside your book.
Yes.
So if you get all hung up on designing a cover that only you like, and it shows up on Amazon and it looks really different than those bestsellers, then people might scratch their heads and say, "I don't know, that looks like it might be self-published. I think I'm going to stick with the well-known published
Mm.
books instead." So it's hard to underestimate the amount of damage you can do if you start micromanaging the design and telling your designer, make this bigger, make this smaller, move this from here to there. You truly are unraveling all of the training your designer has put into it.
Wow. Yeah, that is such a powerful statement, Michelle, that I've been meeting a lot of leaders and a lot of life coaches here on the show, especially when it comes to leadership and how to be an effective leader. And that's one thing that we've touched a lot on, is to stop micromanaging.
Yeah.
And to get your perspective on this as an author, I think that applies to everything in life. And you being so attached to your book as a writer, as the author, and as a self publisher, I think there needs to be a point where everyone needs that reminder: let the designers do their job.
Well, yes, attachment is normal. We're all
Yes.
human, right? I'll tell you a little story. I did not design my own logo because I couldn't detach enough to do it. I
Mm.
struggled and struggled, and I finally handed it off to one of my designers and said, "Here, you do it." And he did, and I approved the first design.
Wow.
I couldn't do it myself, even though I'm technically able to. So it's the same with a book cover. We once revised a cover 34 times. I'm not kidding, because
Wow.
you can't get too hung up. I mean, I've never when you buy a book, have you ever said to yourself, gee, I like that book, I like the subject, but I can't buy it because the shade of yellow is just not right yet?
Yeah.
So it is possible to overdo it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have input and preferences, because of course that's part of the process, but
Right.
at some point, please trust your designer. That
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
And it goes for all other areas of self-publishing too. Like if someone who's listening to this episode is really interested in self-publishing and wants to know more, I think that whatever Michelle just said applies to everything, not just the design, but even your editors. Trust them, trust what they're doing, and it's okay to be attached. And it's okay that the other person might not understand your point of view or your perspective. But as editors, as designers, they know what they're doing because they've seen so many other examples, so many other projects, and they know what readers like and what the market is, and they have experience, so trust their experience. I want to ask Michelle, if I was an author and I'm done with my final draft, it's formatted, it's edited, now is the time for design, how can people reach you?
Okay, they can reach us at 1106design.com. And we believe in complete transparency here. So you will find all of our prices on our website, and you'll
Wonderful.
find a bunch of educational articles and tons of information, and of course a way to contact us. So we would love to hear from everyone. I will talk to anyone with a free consultation, even if they haven't made up their mind yet and they're not sure what they want to do. I'm happy to talk to anyone and just answer their questions.
Oh, wow. And thank you so much, Michelle, by the way. I'm going to touch a little bit on your 88-page guide that you have, and it's titled Publish Like the Pros, a brief guide to quality self publishing. And I want to touch on the point that you mentioned earlier, where you said, when you try to be different, readers, when they're seeing your book cover or your book, in comparison to the other major publishers and books that are published by major publishing houses, they might think, ooh, I think that is self published. So somewhere like the quality is still lacking, right? And in your guide, I want to know, what have you explained, what's the biggest tip or biggest suggestion that you would give to self publishers in order to improve the quality and at least sound or look like one of the traditionally published books?
I would say just hire experts, hire people who have a lot of experience, editors,
Agree.
designers, ebook formatters, whatever. It's kind of difficult to do that if you go out. You'll hear a lot of times that people go out to Fiverr and they'll hire a book cover designer or an editor there, and they will get very cheap rates. But I can tell you that the real professionals are not putting themselves out there on Fiverr. They're busy. They have lots of work, and you can't make any money on Fiverr.
Yes,
So you might get lucky, but chances are you're not going to find a top-notch editor or designer on Fiverr.
I agree.
So there is an alternative to trying to manage all those freelancers yourself, and that's to use an author services company like mine, where the team has been assembled and vetted and dependable, and there's somebody at every stage of the process making sure that the job is done to professional standards, and that's what we do. So it's very easy for the author.
That is wonderful. I am writing my second book and I think I know who to go to now.
Well, you're welcome, and I would love to work with you.
That would be awesome, Michelle. This is so cool. I think you've taught us a lot about design and you've taught us a lot about self-publishing. But I'm going to give you a situation, and I want you to tell us, what would you do if you were in that situation? Imagine you are an author who has had bad experiences with self publishing in the past. You're also a reader who can make out that difference, like you mentioned, between a traditionally published book and a self published book. Now, people are using AI for a lot of stuff, generating images to generating text, and that authenticity that human touch is kind of losing its impact. So imagine you're an author like that and you've had bad experience with self-publishing. What would you do?
Well, I would again just work with humans, right? I think AI it's so brand new. We're all still finding out what it can do and what it should do and what it shouldn't do.
Right.
I think it's great for research. I mean, I use it to ask questions, and the responses are truly impressive. I can't argue with that. But if you find yourself wanting to generate an illustration, for
Mm,
example, on AI, you should question, where is AI learning how to do that?
yeah.
It's been stealing all of our work for 20 years without telling us. So it's not that AI knows how to draw. It's analyzing other people's
Models.
work
Yeah.
that is out there, and it's basically stealing it. So, I think there's lots of legal issues that have yet to be worked out regarding AI. The illustrations I've seen for AI, some of them are just not there yet. You'll see somebody's hand with six fingers, that
Oh,
kind
yeah.
that kind of thing. So it's problematic, and I would hope that people recognize that you're putting someone out of work
Correct.
if you do that, right?
Correct.
There are illustrators who need to make a living and who will do a good job and interact with you human to human, and find out what you want and capture your vision. So asking a machine to do that is probably not a good idea.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that is true. That is so true. Okay, so again, pivoting back to publishing like the pros, Michelle, besides hiring experts, what's one thing that you've noticed that most people tend to forget or most people tend to not pay too much attention when it comes to self-publishing?
Okay, well, my big thing, because I worked in the typesetting industry for a long time too, is that people don't understand that the interior pages of a book are designed just like the cover, and they're typeset according to old fashioned, you could say old fashioned conventions that have
Right.
evolved over many years to make reading an easy experience. Typesetters Book typesetters, book designers spend a lot of time making sure all of the spacing is exactly right. There are no distractions in the text that are going to take your mind away from the message that you're reading. And it's a detailed process, very meticulous. So you'll hear sometimes people are formatting their own book in Word, or maybe they're using a software program like Vellum. These It's not the way to go. It doesn't address the issues that a human typesetter is going to fix for you. And books look easy because
Yeah,
someone has already solved all of the problems, but it's not easy. It's very time consuming to do it right. And
I agree.
that's what
I
we do.
agree. I think the underlying message here is that if you want your self published book to have that impact, to get that attention, and to be as qualitative as the traditionally published book, then you have to put an effort, you have to hire the right people, and you have to trust them and their experience. And yes, it might cost you, but at the end it's definitely going to be worth it. I remember I had a very bad experience with my self-published book in the beginning because I was somebody had recommended this editor and she charged a hefty amount per word. And you can see that book in the shelf there. It was a book on why we need more women in tech. And it had a list of 30 plus jobs. And I had used that same word again and again. So I actually deducted that from my word count and I sent it to her. And she was mad. But keeping that aside, she edited the book, she gave it back to me. Yes, there were a lot of red things, which I expected, and there should be. But once she was done, we actually went through 3 rounds of editing. I just shared that final edited draft with my husband, and in just 15 minutes, he was able to point out 10 mistakes
Oh,
that she had forgotten or she had missed. And so I just want to warn people who are listening this, that sometimes don't just go off of recommendations. Do your own due diligence, do your research, go check out their reviews, go talk to people who've already used them, and who've been there. And it's the same as you would do when you're going to buy a house. You want to make sure that your realtor is doing right by you, and is on your team,
Mhm.
and wants to get the best for you, like the best deal. So do the same thing for self-publishing books too, and you'll get the result. But Michelle, before we end, I want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you would like to tell our listeners and viewers?
No, you've great questions. You've covered everything I would want to cover. And I would just say, on a personal level, what bothers me most about the changes in the publishing industry is that there are now companies who will just tell authors what they want to hear. Like, yes, you should format your book in Word. Yes, you should design your own cover. And I find that really disturbing, because a business should not promote a lack of an understanding on the part of its customers. A business should educate people. And I think a lot of authors, they hear what they have an idea of what they want to spend, and then they go find a company that will charge them that amount. But what they really should do is do some research and say, okay, what does it cost to do a book the right way? And then now let me interview some people who can do it the right way, and then make my selection from there. Because when you're buying services, it's very easy to cut corners and offer a cheaper price. It's not like buying products that are all the same and may be offered for a lower price somewhere else. Services are human.
Yes,
And, yes, you can find an editor who does the job in half the time for half the price, but you're not going to be happy with the result,
correct.
probably.
Correct. 100%. Love it. Love all the suggestions and tips that you gave us, Michelle. And to all the viewers and listeners who have been with us so far, go check out 1106design.com to see what Michelle and her team is doing. And hopefully, it's going to help you in your journey to becoming a self published author.
Well, thank you. I forgot to mention that you can download the guide for free at our
Yes.
website, and sign up for our newsletter. And I'm happy to have anybody read the book. It's just a quick introduction to self-publishing, and I think it will dispel some myths that you may have heard earlier.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. Thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure having
Thank,
you today.
thank you so much.
I hope you guys learned a thing or two about self publishing. And trust me, I've been there, I've done that. So I hope you will follow what Michelle and I discussed today on this episode. I just need you to do one thing. If you were happy, if you felt great, if you felt this was useful, share it with someone who you feel is going to benefit from this episode. It's going to make a lot of difference for me and my goal. Don't forget to check out the 30-day journal for burnout recovery. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode of Rise and Tell with Sheekha. My upcoming book, Unburnable Ambition, is all about how to chase your biggest goals without losing yourself to burnout. You can now sign up at shikasingh.com/unburnable ambition for early access and launch updates. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself, and keep your ambition unburnable. Thank you.